Wonderful. And she wasn't lying. There is tons to cover, but we did cover the basics when we did our intro to problem solving and decision making. So today we're just going to talk about how are we going to deepen those skills and really get into the practicality. What are some practical tools and how can we actually put those concepts into motion, and so really deep dive into all of that. So before that, we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go straight to Menti because I'm going to ask a question. What do you think is the number one reason that problem solving efforts fail? So think about that question while I get everything sharing. And then make sure you guys have your Menti link and go ahead and open that. Am I sharing? I think I am. Okay. So make sure, sometimes my brain just it's like, what are you really doing something you said you were going to do? Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to go in and we're going to go into the first Menti. And so, what do you think is the number one reason problem solving efforts fail? Either lack of creativity, poor planning, focusing on the wrong problem, or resistance to change. Awesome. I think we've got most of you. Awesome. And for majority, absolutely. I think we have one more. Awesome. Thank you. The answer is focusing on the wrong problem. And so when we talked about the last time we met, we talked about problem solving. We talked about all the different tools that we get to diagnose. How do we diagnose the actual problem we're trying to solve? Research shows that up to 80% of problem solving initiatives or failures happen because teams are focusing on the symptoms rather than the cause. So remember when we talked about the root cause analysis, are we getting down to the root? What is happening? This is why this happens. And what we do is we put a band-aid on the issues and we really don't seek the problem. So this sets up why. So what we're going to be talking about is when we're solving a problem that we realize that we didn't actually fix the issue. So how do we do that? What happens? And then also we're going to be challenging some of the reasons why we focus on systems instead of root causes. Now, as we're doing this, I'm sorry, I'm still a little tickly from being sick. But what we're going to be transitioning to is we're going to see in depth some of the pitfalls, some of the assumptions, some of the biases we bring into solving problems. Let me go ahead and exit out of here. Let's see. There we go. And so anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions in problem solving, knowing why it matters, because it really does lead to a lot of the pitfalls, the assumptions, and the biases. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. So as we get into our lesson, we will be strengthening our analytical thinking. So we're going to identify and overcome some cognitive pitfalls, refine analysis using structured questioning, and applying our decision-making frameworks to enhance problem-solving accuracy. So we're going to begin. I'm going to do an overview of what we covered just to kind of get us all back on the same page. And then we're going to do a deep dive back into those individual ones. So remember, we had enhancing solution development. So this is where we'll be challenging assumptions, exploring innovative approaches, and using structured evaluation methods to compare and refine solutions effectively. We'll also refine our implementation strategies. What does it mean to set clear, actionable goals? Aligning our team roles, resources, and really enforcing our communication checkpoints to ensure smooth execution. We'll deep dive more into optimizing our monitoring and adaptation methods, and some of the tools you'll be introduced to today. One of frameworks of the PDCA, retrospective analysis. How do we track progress? And if I don't do the acronym, you'll know the definition as we get through. So I'll define that for you. But track progress, gathering feedback, making data-driven adjustments for continuing improvement. And also we'll engage in a hands-on activity application, how we're going to participate in a mirror-like board activity. And this is what you'll do in your skills lab with real-world case studies, applying the problem-solving strategies and the skills, and the decision-making, innovation, and execution that we're going to cover together. So as we do, we'll talk about the I can statement. So back to Menti, everyone. I would love to hear where you feel you are when it comes to I can overcome cognitive pitfalls with prevention tools kits. So cognitive bias prevention checklist. Yes. You can refine solutions by challenging assumptions, exploring and comparing innovative approaches. You can create clear, actionable implementation plans, SMART goals, aligning team goals, and establishing communication checkpoints, and also tracking progress and adapting strategies and using monitoring frameworks like PDCA and retrospective analysis and drives continuous improvement. Now, if you're on the no side of the spectrum, don't worry. The goal is by the end of our time together that your responses will not be the same as you are now. But where you are today, are you familiar with some of these concepts? And the goal is that by the end of the lesson, you will be able to change your submission right now. Okay with that. And so these are our learning goals for today. Awesome. So more or less kind of middle of the road. Awesome. I totally get the last part, PDCA and retrospective analysis. We'll definitely cover that. So stay tuned, but more or less we've got some work to do, but overall pretty good assessment. All right. All right, back to Menti for another question. Thinking about your experience solving problems in both personal and professional settings. So, personally, how do you feel? How confident do you feel in your ability to problem solve effectively right now? Not confident at all with a scale of 1 or extremely confident? Extremely confident. We make decisions every day. We may not think about the process we're doing. We're hoping that as we go through them, you're seeing the tools that you're probably already putting into place and then even deepening with some new tools for you. So this is great. Awesome. 3-5. We've got some room. Great. I'll let a couple more people. Very good. All right. Keep that in mind where you are today, and then see how we are at the end of our time together. Thank you so much. All right. Let's dive in. This will be a quick recap. So I'll try to go as slow as possible, but I really want to spend time going into these deep dives. So we're just going to cover as quickly as I can what we covered in our first time together when we were talking about building problem solving and key decision making skills. So as you remember, we shared 4 different areas. One was the analytical analytical thinking piece of it. The second was the solution development, implementation, and then monitoring and adaptation. And when we talked about analytical thinking, it was really breaking down our complex challenges, right, into manageable parts. So, for example, analyzing sales data to identify root causes of declining revenue. When we got to solution development, that's balancing creativity with practicality. We talked about brainstorming in that area, when we were together, generating cost-saving ideas while maintaining product quality. Implementation, we saw how do we align our team and executing our plans effectively. So rolling out a new process, but with clear communication and accountability. And the last part, monitoring and adaptation, adapting to change and learning from outcomes. So adjusting our project timeline when there are unexpected delays. And I should draw like an invisible line, but not be afraid of going back to the process. When we're talking it's a process, going back and doing it again. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so first one, is analytical thinking. So the main objective was learning how to break down problems into manageable parts. And the tools that we talked about that we covered were the root cause analysis. Remember, what's the real reason? What's really happening? What's the real problem? Pattern recognition, and also prioritization matrix. So identifying patterns and root causes, gathering and evaluating relevant data, and then prioritizing data for maximum impact. And that is what we covered in general for the tools for the analytical thinking. In summary, some of our key takeaways that we talked about were making sure we ask the right questions which uncovers hidden problems. If anyone can remember how many questions we're supposed to ask, the 5. Oh, I already gave you the answer. The how many whys we should, you can put it in the chat for me, but I gave it to you. But asking the right questions, challenging assumptions. Where do errors most often occur? And then patterns in data to help predict challenges. So using data to guide our decisions, spotting trends and anomalies, tracking delivery times and delays. We covered those tools when we did when we did our deep dive to technical proficiency. So using data visually to help us look at trends, predict challenges. Also really uncovering maybe some of our blind spots. So one of the other takeaways is different perspectives, revealing blind spots. And here's where we leverage team input. What does it look like to get cross-functional insight so that we can improve our accuracy, discussing workload distribution, spotting inefficiencies? I think that's better. Big picture thinking also prevents system fixing, stepping back for the big picture, avoiding quick fixes, and analyzing long-term impact before deciding. So we talked a lot about what does it look like to do short-term changes or long-term changes? What's the impact? How are we going to look at the big picture thinking to prevent our just symptom fixing, only looking at the symptoms and not really getting to the root problem? So some of the workplace tips that we have are using a prioritization matrix to separate urgent issues from root problems, tracking trends over time. So don't make decisions based on one-time events. This is very much a data-driven analysis that we do. And then before solving a problem, always asking the question, am I addressing the real issue or just treating the system? And then really engaging others. This is the collaboration piece of it. How can we leverage all the information and the resources around us to be able to not make assumptions, to be able to make some really sound decisions? So collaborating for input, very important. All right. The next component is building, problem solving, and solution development. So exploring strategies to generate and assess solutions. Two parts of that was one, creatively brainstorming. Remember, there's no rules. It's no holds barred. We get all the ideas and as many ideas as we can. And then evaluating short and long-term impact. And the toolkits we talked about were brainstorming best practices. We also talked about creative thinking toolkits, and then solution decision matrix. When we talk about solution development, our key takeaways, the key things we want to make sure that we're doing is that we have clear problem statements that lead to better solution. So defining the issue clearly in simple, actionable terms, meaning reduce order fulfillment delays. That clarity we'll also revisit in some of the deep diving tools when we're really setting our goals. How do we get really clear, actionable terms that we can do? Oh, no, go back. More ideas increases the chances of success. So this is also brainstorming, starting broader, the big ideas, then narrowing down, encouraging all ideas before filtering them away, listing all the ways, including unconventional ones. So what does it look like to really foster an environment for creativity? And ideas. Balancing, once we get all those creative ideas, we then have to balance creative and feasibility to ensure sustainability. So really evaluating short and long-term effects. Remember with some of the matrices that we have, either weighing them against weighing our costs, our feasibility, our impact, and really fixing into what's a quick fix versus what's a sustainable change. Also, focusing on prioritizing helps focus on high impact solutions. And so, with that, we use a decision matrix. Remember, with the weighted average, which one was a really good solution, but also comparing the solutions based on key criteria. So what are the big hits? Do we want feasibility? Would you want impact? Do we want cost savings? Do we want an immediate fix? How do we decide between those different options? And again, here, collaboration improving our decision making, really encouraging team input. When we involve different perspectives, to refine our ideas and ensure alignment of our workplace needs, we get buy-in. And so we're able to, one, identify some of the challenges as well once everybody's on the same page. So for example, frontline staff insights on workflow issues, really getting the input where we need it. When we use a solution decision matrix, we're comparing solutions objectively based on cost, feasibility, and impact. And notice the word objectively. We're going to talk a little bit about bias. So it's really using the facts when we're making decisions. Balance creativity with practicality. Innovative ideas should align with resources and business goals. So ideas are great, but we also want to make sure that we do have our resource and business goals also in tandem. So it's a tension that we really need to work on. Before committing to a solution, always ask, does this solve a root issue or just a symptom? And then just making sure that we involve key team members. Solutions are strongest when we develop them collaboratively. And then also review past decisions. Did a similar solution work before? Why or why not? Really using our past also to inform our present and our future. It's always good to look back. All right. So the key steps we're going to move off to implementation. And we're a small group, so if there's any time you have a question, we really do have some of the space for that. Feel free to drop it in a chat or unmute. I don't mind being interrupted if there's any questions, just so that you guys know. Key steps to successful implementation. Again, we're action planning, assigning roles, and then setting realistic timelines. So making sure, back to kind of the beginning, breaking solutions into small, achievable tasks, assigning roles, clarity, defining responsibility for each task is really key. And then also setting realistic timelines, creating a clear schedule with milestones to track progress. And a lot of these key words, and you'll see realistic timelines or assigning roles or planning. All of these are feeding into the depth of the tools that we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes. All right. Successful implementation really highlights when we're breaking solutions into smaller steps, using checklists for task clarity, tracking our tasks for progress. So is there a process for a workflow improvement that can be easily done with the checklist? Is it something that we can do? Also, clear roles preventing confusion and improves efficiency. Clarity defines responsibility for each task. When we assign, you lead, you oversee workflow adjustments. If we delegate, we're able to optimize our workflow. And if you task an associate to test something, make sure, and then also providing feedback. So what can we do when we're assigning clear roles to those who are also best suited? So delegating based on strength and also assigning them to who is best suited. So there's a really big element of knowing our people. Timelines, keeping track for projects on track and measurable. And how do we do measurable? Measurable is going to be important. Setting milestones, defining short-term goals, monitoring our progress. For example, if we're going to finish inventory reorganization midweek, okay, what are the steps to get us to that milestone to make sure that we finish that inventory reorganization? So not setting goals just out there, but actually setting milestones to get to that goal and then measuring against it. Adaptability is key to handling unexpected changes. It's really important in process in general, just to stay flexible, adjusting timelines and tasks as needed to be able to see and to flex, because with all our hopes and all of our great intentions, if we end up doing a plan that doesn't seem to really hit the cause, we need to be flexible to go back and to be able to rework it. And so that it's a skill of flexibility to be able to do that and do. So, for example, if you need to extend testing phase, if initial results need improvement, or we need to stop and actually reconfigure, what does that look like? So that flexibility allows us to be able to handle unexpected challenges and actually rework and do our best work. Ongoing communication ensures alignment and accountability. So, communicating regularly, using check ins to track progress, either morning team huddles, set priorities, Slack, whatever tool that helps communication as we're doing these changes really makes implementation very, very successful. So, using we're over here. So breaking large groups into phases or large projects into phases and maintaining momentum to avoid bottlenecks. So really handling our process in bite-sized changes, using simple tracking tools like checklists or dashboards to help for alignment, making sure we balance our structure with flexibility, stick to the plan, but adjust when challenges arise. How can we do that? Adapt plans as needed rather than waiting for major problems to arise. I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing. I'm over here. Balancing structure and then clarifying expectations upfront to prevent miscommunication. And then the big thing, especially in implementation, is to celebrate small wins. How do we keep our team members engaged and motivated within implementation so that they also continue to feed into communicating? How is this going? How are we doing? How are we performing? All right. And then the last piece is monitoring and adaptation. And here it's regularly monitoring, keeping solutions, keep solutions on effective. Setting clear, I don't know how, sorry, setting clear checkpoints, scheduling reviews to track our progress, weekly check-ins to track our workflow. So we're really now, we've made our implementation, we've brainstormed, we've set something in motion, and now this is us following through and watching this process flow. Using data to help necessary adjustments. So using key metrics, tracking error rates, task completion signs. You are all now equipped to using Excel to be able to do that. Analyzing packing accuracy reports to identify trends. How do we get the data to tell us a story of what's happening and to measure our improvement behind there? And then also feedback improves solutions, always gathering team input, asking employees what's working and what isn't working. Warehouse staff highlighting a bottleneck in the new layout. So creating that environment so people can continue to speak into the process so that we can refine if we need to. And then also regularly assessing ensures long-term success. So revisiting the big picture, confirming solutions with our goals. Does this process actually reduce delays or shift them elsewhere? So how do we look back while we're doing and seeing what we're doing? So some practical tips just in summary, establishing regular check-ins, using dashboards, reports to highlight, making sure we have a very open feedback loop so that we can get any concerns early from our team, and then adapting plans as needed rather than waiting for problems to happen. And also making sure to measure our long-term success by assessing whether solutions create lasting improvements. So constantly there. So that was a very quick flyby. Hopefully it's just a refresher to what we did together before we dive into the meat of this week's time together. So we're going to head off to Menti again. So if you can get your Mentis ready, I'm going to ask, which of these challenges has slowed you down when problem solving? So, this is a personal reflection. Have you found that you rush to solutions? Have you found that you are often limited by perspective? Are you inflexible? Or do we just overcomplicate things? Awesome. Yeah. Overcomplication is winning. Let's see. Yeah. Great. All right, I'll just let a couple more of you reflect on that. But effective problem solving, I will say, really does require us to overcome these obstacles that really derail us in our process. So, understanding that these challenges are the first step to addressing them. If I'm being really honest with you, I would probably say I probably live in one of these at one point or another, overcomplicating something or just being inflexible. Because as much as I'm a really good change agent, sometimes there's that desire to say, but it's always worked this way. It's a really easy answer to be in there. But at times we really do need to go back and say, well, how do we improve this process? Because we can always improve something. So, yes, so there's no right or wrong answer, but just kind of knowing where you are. But as we understand why some problems remain unsolved, the first step is really improving our problem solving skills. So, we're going to explore some of these problems more in depth. So, thank you all for sharing. And let's see, where do I go from here? We go back into the spreadsheet. Okay. So like we said, the four key problem solving challenges. One is rushing to solutions. So we're jumping to quick fixes without a full analysis. So for example, we might implement a costly software without diagnosing the real efficiency. We may change our software because we think it doesn't work, but it could just be users and we just need to do training as opposed to just throwing out the software and finding something new. When we often live in limited perspective, we're ignoring data. We're ignoring diverse viewpoints and alternative ideas. So looking and asking for other information. Remember, we talked about that collaboration piece. A team leader makes a decision based only on one person's experience, and we might be missing the whole team's insight. The other part is inflexibility, sticking to outdated plans despite new information. So refusing to update workflows because we've always done it this way. So this just sounds like me written on the screen. But sometimes we really need to allow ourselves to have that to change our perspective. And then also overcomplication. Sometimes we overanalyze instead of acting. So delaying our decisions to perfect small details instead of moving forward. And these key problem solving challenges we are going to cover. But what now? Now that we've identified these challenges, the question is, where do we go from here now that we have it? And where do we go from here is, nope, not there. Let me go back. Where do we go from here? Okay, I go back in here. And this is where we go. Troubleshooting at its best. But where do we go from here? And this is where we go. This is how we get over. This is a tool for us. You could tell by the little toolbox over here. But to get over some of these problem solving challenges, there are three key components. One being curiosity, the other being open mindedness, and the last one being resilience. So, if you hear anything about me saying about all of our problems, these are really, to me, some of the key things is digging deeper and asking why more than once. So, when we talked about the 5 whys, is the reason. What it does, it challenges our assumptions before jumping to conclusions. And it helps us to explore problems from different angles before deciding. Curiosity, one of the things I love about curiosity is because it helps us develop the things that we need to do to be able to get deeper. And when you're in, I think we talked about the last time we were here, was like how to communicate some of the things that we are wanting to communicate, some of the challenges that we saw, or even asking questions about why something was working. And the question structure that I love is I'd be curious to know. So I'd be curious to know how we did this in the past. If you're asking people, it's a little less aggressive and it's a lot more curiosity, inviting them into asking the questions when we're looking for information or exploring problems from different angles. I'd be curious to know if we implement it this way, what impact would that have? So that's your gift from me to you on just using the structure. I'd be curious to know, which I really love. The second part is open mindedness. So, seeking diverse perspectives before settling on a solution. So, considering alternative viewpoints. So, using the questions of curiosity to be able to get the alternative viewpoints, but then also challenging our personal bias, being willing to adjust our thinking as new information emerges. So, here, my biggest challenge in general when we talk about open mindedness and with people is allowing new information to really change what we're thinking. So, allowing us to pivot. And that takes a lot in us to be able to say, no, I'm receiving something new. Let me rewire what's happening. And so, in a lot of my work, this is one of the key things I do when I work with people is really helping us adjust our new thinking based on new information so that then we can go forward. And then also, the last piece is resilience. So, viewing setbacks as learning opportunities and not failure failures. So, ironically enough, I was doing this. I was in the middle. I wrote this down. I said, failure really is a stepping stone to success. And that this week, when I was looking, I had failed something big. And so I was just very, very ironic for me to actually have to do the words that I think failure is just a stepping stone to success. I will go forward and I will try again. And what do we do? Our actionable tips is really focusing on progress and not perfection. Solutions really do evolve over time. And then taking that time to reflect on what worked in the past for past challenges and then applying those lessons. So we're constantly looking, constantly really being letting our past inform our present and our future, but looking to make sure that we take all of that into consideration. Okay. Next. All right. How are we doing? Think we're doing good? Hands up. I see thumbs up. Really good. Now, brace yourself. This is a lot of content today. I'm going to try to go through it, but seriously, if you have any questions, we do have the time for you to ask. So now that we've talked about what do we do? What are the three things that we need to be able to develop our mindset for more effective problem solving? We can now go into a deeper dive into the four skills, and the first being our analytical thinking. And the tools, so we're going to cover some tools, and I think it's best if I do it this way. But the tools I will be introducing, one is a cognitive bias checklist, and then the mirror board. And one of the biggest pitfalls that we're wanting to avoid, remember, we talked about how do we avoid some of the challenges in problem solving, and these are the pitfalls, is understanding and overcoming the thinking traps by using prevention checklists. So we have a systematic way to be able to help us work through some of the cognitive pitfalls that we have. And so we can do this in the chat. I want to hear from as many of you as possible, but I do have a rule in mind, and it applies to three sets of numbers. And so the answer is two. Actually, so am I here? 2, 4. Wait 1 second. I'm sorry. I think I was supposed to. No, I think I'm good. No, I'm good. All right. So, yeah, I am good. Sorry. I have a rule in mind that applies to three sets of numbers. So 2, 4, and 6. So there's a rule. I would love for you to in the Slack chat to suggest a set of three numbers that you believe fits whatever rule 2, 4, and 6 is stating. And then I'll let you know if it's a yes or no if it doesn't fit. And then I'll ask you at the end what you think the rule is. So 3, 6, 9, yes. Any more rules? Or any more answers to try to crack this rule? 4, 8, 16, yes. Other guesses? 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 4. All right, we'll get a couple more. And then as you're thinking about it, what do you think the rule is? So you can go ahead and put that in the chat or just say it out loud if you'd like. What rule? Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 4. Yes. 3, 5, 7. Yes. 10, 20, 30. Yes. 10, 5, 0. No. 2, 4, 6. Yes. What do we think the rule is? 3, 6, 9. Yes. Awesome. All right. Either out loud or in the chat, what rule do you think it is? 3, 5, 6. If those are separate numbers, no. Or yes. Yes. 3, 5, 6 is a yes. All right. What do you think the rules are? Any three numbers in ascending order? Ascending order. Ascending order. Very good. Yeah, it's any number, any increasing sequence. And so awesome. 5, 10, 15. Any increasing sequence. Very good. Yay. Other perspectives would have been 500, 5,000, 10,000. Other ones would have been 1, 100, 1,000. That would work as well. Awesome. Very, very good. Okay. Let's see. All right. Thank you all for participating. 1 through 5. Yes. Good. So, all right. So when we go, most people, just kind of debriefing this activity a little bit, is that most people only test numbers that confirm their assumptions rather than trying to disprove it. So there's something there that I want us to hold on to. But just being creative with what we see, sometimes we would see this and assume it's only a sequence increasing by 2, and that was very limiting. And so a more broader response for this one was it was any increasing sequence, which kind of broadens what our answer would be. So thank you all for participating. All right. So we're going to head into Menti after I talk about this slide, but there are ways that we can strengthen our analytical thinking and avoid the common pitfalls. The 4 ways to avoid the common pitfalls would be: one is, or the pitfalls that we want to avoid are jumping to conclusions, confirmation bias, overlooking context, and analysis paralysis. So when we jump to conclusions, what does that mean? It's assuming the first explanation is correct without deeper analysis. So for example, you have a team leader who notices a drop in productivity and assumes that employees are disengaged without checking to see if the equipment issues are slowing them down. It's very clear. This is what's happening. Confirmation bias really speaks into some of our personal bias, that we look for data that confirms what we already believe instead of considering alternative. So this is where sometimes experience or routine kind of will get us in trouble, because a team leader may assume longer shifts improves efficiency, but only looks at output volume, ignoring employee fatigue and turnover rates. So if you remember when we went back to that spreadsheet and we were looking through morning shift and night shift, and you notice there was more productivity at night than in the morning, which you would think that would be the case. Well, because there's probably less distractions at night than in the morning. But if you just think, oh, well, they're just lazy, you're not really looking at what would be some of the information behind it, because you're just assuming what would be the answer. Overlooking context, narrowing in too quickly on a single cause without considering broader influences or the broader influence. So a company sees an increase in delivery and blames packing associates without considering other factors. Could there be other factors for delivery delays? Probably. Do we quickly go to just one without thinking, oh, is there some other environmental issue that we're not really taking into consideration? So what does it look like not to overlook context? And then the last one is analysis paralysis. So this is when we get stuck in over analyzing instead of making decisions. So we're a team and we keep gathering data about warehouse efficiencies, but we just really delay implementing any solutions because we're just kind of data hungry and not really putting anything into play. All right, so we're moving off Cementi. And the question I have for you is which of the following, wait, let me see, am I correct in where I am right now? Yes. Which of the following, and we'll go ahead and answer it. Which of the following analytical thinking common pitfalls do you believe that you need to strengthen? Jumping to conclusions, analysis paralysis. Very good. Good. Confirmation bias. Yeah, we'll cover all of these a little bit more to depth and really strengthening your toolkit to be able to strengthen these areas. Really good. Analysis paralysis. Very good. Overlooking context. Jumping to conclusions. Very good. All right, I'll let a couple more come in. Very good. Awesome. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into these four pitfalls. And the first one we're going to talk about is our jumping to conclusions. So again, it's really assuming the first explanation is correct. So what are the ways that we can prevent that? One is asking what else can be true? What else could be true? Encouraging alternative explanations instead of assuming the first idea is correct. And then once we have kind of some of our assumptions or things that we're thinking about, then we challenge our first assumption. That's the second step. We pause and we deliberately seek disconfirming evidence to avoid bias. What evidence might contradict my initial belief? Where is there anything out there that's telling me that this probably cannot be true? And so, really asking something different to avoid our bias. Comparing multiple data sources. So, before making a decision, verifying the information by using at least two different sources. And so, when you ask what kind of different sources can there be, there can be qualitative sources, which means you're asking your team members what's happening. There's quantitative information, which are your numbers, your metrics. What can you glean from what's happening so that you can see the issue at hand? And then not being afraid to slow down our decision making process. So, using a pause and review approach before finalizing decisions might be something that you can that would be really helpful. So, taking it's like 5 extra minutes to reassess your conclusion. And so, the simple checklist you can have before acting and running through this quick self checklist would be: have you considered at least two possible explanations? Did you seek out any opposing viewpoint? And are you acting based on evidence or just gut feeling? And so, knowing yourself and how you make decisions, whether you're a gut person, a mind person, feeling person, how are we making decisions? But making sure that is it based on evidence and gut or your gut, but really doing that check within yourself. All right. So, those who are said that jumping to conclusions, let me know in the chat if this is helpful for you. I'd love to hear from you. All right. So confirmation bias. So we hear the word bias. We hear that a lot in different realms as well. But when we look for data that only confirms what we believe instead of considering alternatives, we really need to employ a lot of safeguarding. And one of them would be the first is playing the opposing viewpoint game. So deliberately arguing against your own conclusion. And so, there's an expression, playing devil's advocate, right? Let's really bringing in that other perspective. And then second would be to actually force yourself to find two contradictory data points. So before finalizing decisions, find at least two pieces of evidence that challenge your viewpoint. So, for example, if I'll do an employee satisfaction type of example, four out of your teammates, or let's say three of them, have complained that things are bad, like we are not really getting along, and one says yes. You only have two. There might be someone else that might have a third perspective. Well, it's really only in this context where you see some of these dynamics coming in. So, how do we find two contradictory data points, two pieces of evidence to be able to formulate what we need to decide? Use perspective switching. So, stepping into the shoes of a different stakeholder, so customer, team member, senior leader. This is really important to have a hold on who all your stakeholders are and highlighting that, and then stepping into them. How are they experiencing it? What are their issues? What are the challenges? And what are the benefits? All encompassing. And then also reframing the question is a really great tool to say, instead of asking, does this solution work? You ask, under what conditions might this solution fail? It's all is equal. If all else is equal, but not this, will it fail or will it succeed? And really looking at reframing the question to be able to broaden our perspective. When we set a bias checkpoint before we have decisions, we're going to make a final call. We're going to base it, we're going to pause, and we're going to ask these questions. One, are you favoring data that supports my pre-existing beliefs? We as people in general really like positive. So keeping in mind, are you really only drawn to positive data, positive feedback that reinforces, or can we look at the hard facts and the truth to say, okay, we really are not performing, and this is where it's coming from? Did you consider opposing evidence seriously, or you dismissed it too quickly? So if you tend to be someone who navigates toward positivity, are we not really entertaining some of the information that's coming to us to tell us that there really is an issue? And would you make the same decision if you had to justify to someone skeptical? So if you had someone who is challenging you, challenging the process, would you make that same decision? Do you have all the facts? Are you able to justify it and really go forward? All right. That is for confirmation bias. All right. So the next one is overlooking context. And the key tool here is avoiding surface level thinking. So remember, when we talk about getting down to the root cause, it's not just dealing with the symptoms. We're actually really wanting to deep dive. So first thing is to zoom out before zooming in. So before jumping into details, taking a step back and examining the bigger picture. Some terminology people use in often is what's the 10,000 foot view? What's the 5,000 foot view? What's the 1,000 foot view? And then we get into granularity, but how do we see the forest from the trees? How do we take that step back? Have we considered external and systemic factors? Asking, are there any external influences affecting this problem? Market trends, seasonal demands, employees, what are there affecting them with the external and systemic factors? Using a what changed analysis. If a problem suddenly emerges or worsens, identify what has changed before assuming a cause. And this one is really, really big because it takes us out of the symptoms. We're really trying to look at the root or cause. If we've been doing something systematically for a while and then we're getting this outcome, then stepping back, okay, what has changed? And looking at the different environments or the different areas that might affect that change, and then see if that had an impact. Conducting regularly, I would add regular stakeholder check-ins. So before deciding on a solution, asking who else is affected by these issues, what are their insights? Is there an impact to what's happening for them? And then mapping out a cause and effect relationship. The use, I'm going to show you the next slide, is called a fishbone diagram. It's called a cause and effect diagram. And this is a way to visually explore possible contributing factors. So this was a diagram was created in the 1960s, and it's used to really look for root cause analysis by identifying and categorizing causes to a problem or an effect. So we would state our effect at the fish head. And then what we have here is we have the central spine, and then we have the different causes. And so the effect, we're going to, this is where we define what the problem is, definition. And a lot of ways you have see, if you Google this, you'll be able to see a lot of different resources for this. But some of the major categories, I'm laughing at the chat now. That is really funny. If we look at the different categories, here it just says cause, 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 cause. A way to help us kind of categorize some of those things is with the 5 M's: manpower, machine, material, methods, or measurement. So is there a cause regarding manpower? Is there a cause regarding machine or material or methods? But then also using environment, which would be processes or people. So kind of using those kinds of areas to kind of really dissect what are the causes and then how are they actually having their effect. There's some really great case studies that you can look at if you just Google the fishbone diagram to kind of help you see how you have that causal relationship to the effect that we're really wanting to identify. And then this can kind of help you get to that root cause. So this is this is really a good one to be able to say, to look at what your major causes are, and a great visual effect to be able to show that as you communicate. Well, here's where these factors are really affecting us. All right. And now we are at analysis paralysis. Fun thing to say. But when we overanalyze data, we're overthinking risks, we're fearing mistakes, we're causing delayed decision making or ultimately inaction. Yes, I will share the link to the 5 M's unless someone wants to do it. But manpower, machine, material, methods, and measurement. So Jana, if you could type that for me. I should have given that to you before. Sorry. So when over analyzing data, ultimately, and we're in analysis paralysis, it comes up to inaction. What happens, why we get here, is because we're really focused on making a perfect decision instead of a practical one. We get stuck with gathering data without taking action. And we're really paralyzed by fear of making wrong choices or avoiding making. So then what we do is we just avoid making choices at all. And that's not really what we're after when we're doing problem solving and processes. We're really looking into using as much data as we can, but then actually moving forward so that we can make a decision. And so perfection isn't what we're looking for. We're looking for improvement. We're looking for problem solving. And the beauty of problem solving and the processes that we have in place is that we do embed processes to be able to go back, go back, reflect, and redo, gathering information and rework. And so having that flexibility to have to go back is amazing. All right. I will put those 5 M's in the chat before the time is over, so don't worry about that. All right. And all right, so here we are. How can we avoid? Did I go back already? Yeah, I did. Right. So how can we avoid analysis paralysis and decision making? So here are some 5 steps that we could do. Is 1, setting a decision deadline. So defining a clear time frame for research, discussion, and decision making, saying this is how much time we can look into it. This is when we'll discuss, but we really need to make a decision by this day. Prioritizing good enough over perfection. What's the best decision we can make with the information we have now? Over time, you'll get more information. We can pivot, but today, this helps us move forward. Limiting data to key decision factors. So very similar to the solutions data matrix, we had 3 to 5 criteria to use to evaluate solutions rather than collecting excessive data. So once we have data, so just think about that when you're having your data all in your Excel spreadsheet, identifying what are the 5 key things, 3 to 5 key things that you're going to then look at the data, extrapolate, and this is what I'll base my decision based off of. Using the 80% rule, if a solution is 80% ready, act on it rather than waiting for 100% certainty. I do truly believe the only certainty in life is change. So if we can get close with as much information as we can and we have the flexibility to work through it, then let's just go. And as long as you have a firm foundation to why you've made the decisions that you've gotten to based on data, based on feedback, then you're that much more equipped to be able to go through. And then also, when you get to step 5, where you have a set review and plan and an adjustment plan, you'll be able to go through because we're going to remind ourselves that decisions are rarely final. Adjustments can be made. And so we can always work with that. All right. Questions on analysis paralysis or anything as I quickly type the 5 M's into the chat. I will let you guys, if there's nothing, that's good, but I'll take a quick break to type this in for you. Material. Okay, there are the 5 M's for you. And I don't see little typing. I see one typing. And then I'll add the other one. I mentioned environment. That is with process and people. You're very welcome. All right. Next tool is the cognitive bias checklist. You say that like 20 times fast. What's the cognitive bias checklist? Why does it matter? Even with awareness of our pitfalls, biases creep in. We're only human. And biases really are just kind of our initial beginning point where we are with information, and it feeds into our thinking process, our patterns, and how we react. And to counteract our biases is to allow new information to challenge our biases in order for us to change. So some of the checklist questions that you can ask yourselves in order to get out of our own way is, have you gathered input from diverse sources instead of relying on personal experiences? I'll probably add, don't always go to the same people, right? Like when it means diverse, it means really broadening that environment. There are so many tools at your disposal to be able to access. Have you deliberately sought out contradicting information? Have you factored in external influences like market trend, team workload, timing? I think we're in the middle of Prime Day. Have we looked into how those things are affecting what's happening? Have you set a decision deadline to avoid inaction? Are we really motivated to making a decision? And are you making decisions based on critical insights rather than surface level observations? And so, how we use this checklist is that we use it before finalizing key decisions. We also can assign a team member to play bias detective and challenge those assumptions, someone to check you. Am I really thinking the right way? And then cross-checking decisions with external data or team input. How does this decision fit? Is it right? Are we on the right track? Are we missing anything? All right. So some tools that you can use. This is a collaboration tool. I love visual tools. I'm going to show you a 3-minute video introducing you to this tool called the Miro board. And I needed to, oops. Am I in there? Oh, I just did the wrong thing. All right. Sorry, guys. Where? No, that's not where I want to be. Okay. This is when. Here we go. Here we are. First, can you still see my screen? Am I still sharing correctly? Yes? No? Oh, did I just get out of? Okay, you guys are still here. Okay, good. All right, I'm playing a video.
Hi, my name is Madison, and I'm going to teach you how to use Miro. In the next few minutes, we'll review what you'll need to be an effective participant in your upcoming event. By the end of this video, you will know what Miro is, how to move around the space, and how to add thoughts and ideas. So let's answer the biggest question first. What is Miro? Simply put, Miro is a collaboration platform that allows you to work with others online. Working in Miro helps people express ideas, solve problems, and provide insightful feedback. Okay, let me introduce you to a Miro board. Everything in Miro happens on boards. Boards start off empty, and then objects like stickies, shapes, and lines get added to build something unique and exciting, like this workshop. Think of boards like rooms, where you enter in and work with others. What's cool about Miro is that the board is infinite. You can push and pull yourself in any direction without ever finding the edges. So let's talk about how you'll navigate this space. When using your mouse, hold down the right button and click and pull across the board. See how I can click and pull myself to a new area? Zoom in and out by scrolling on the mouse wheel. If you want to use your trackpad, drag 2 fingers across the trackpad to move around the board. To zoom, pinch like you would on a smartphone or tablet. Miro will automatically know if you're using a mouse or trackpad, but you can switch between these 2 modes in the navigation settings under Preferences. If you're moving around and happen to find yourself on a part of the board you didn't intend, there are a few easy and quick ways to reorient yourself. Press Command or Control-1 to center the content on the board, or click the host avatar on the top of the screen to join back in on collaborating. Okay, moving right along. Add thoughts and ideas to a board using sticky notes and comments. Create a sticky note by clicking the sticky icon. Then, click anywhere on the board to place it and immediately start typing. Add comments by clicking the comments icon and dropping it on the board. Once you're done typing, press Enter to leave the comment. Click and drag any of these objects to move them around the board. In Miro, there are fun, visual ways to show what's on your mind. Click on the reactions icon and choose one of the reactions that matches how you're feeling, and then watch it appear at the bottom of the screen. Or you can add stickies and emojis. Click on the icon and then choose which one you want to drag on the board. So the next time you want to share how you feel or what you think, add a sticker or reaction to visually show your opinion. You are now ready for your first Miro experience. Happy collaborating!
All right. We should be back. Let's see. All right. And we did the Miro board. Okay, this is where we are. All right. So a Miro board is also a really great tool that will be able to help you organize complex problems, tracking root causes. So creating a map of warehouse efficiencies, for example, by visualizing connecting contributing factors. We also talked about some of the things when it came to decision making and problem solving. One of the metrics is that we're trying to highlight which decisions were based on other decisions. This is also a really great tool to depict that information. And this process that you see with the decision making and thing is really used in Lean Six Sigma, agile thinking, critical paths. This is where you see that. All right. So now we're going off to Menti. Talked about the 4 toolkits to fight some of the challenges that we have. So how confident do you feel with the following? Jumping to conclusions preventions toolkit, the confirmation prevention toolkit, the decision making, and the cognitive bias one. Great. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes for that, or 1 minute. Good. All right, so more or less in the confident realm. As with all the tools that we've talked about and we explore, a lot of it is practice, really sitting with it, internalizing it, and then soon they honestly do become not decision, but they become second nature, just like we make a million decisions every day. So as we're implementing these tools and we're putting in the practice, you'll see how they become second nature. Awesome. Very good. Yay. All right. I think we're good. All right. So let's see how you're doing. Some are still in the middle with the cognitive bias checklist, but if there's any questions, feel free to ask. But very good. Yeah. Some pretty good results so far. Okay. So now we're going to get to the second key skills. How are we going to strengthen the key skills of solution development? And here the tools we're going to talk about are scamper method, the analogous thinking, and trade-off analysis as the tools. And what we're going to do in our time under solution development is really refine and expand our ideas by challenging assumptions, exploring approaches, and comparing solutions and weighing trade-offs. And then you'll know what these tools are as we go along. But why is it important? Because many problems do persist, because some solutions are based on best practices rather than new insights. And hear me when I say past practices rather than new insights. You'll often hear people use and refer to best practices, and best practices really is the marriage of past practices with new insights, looking over time what is successful for and becoming best practice. So, how do we look at past and include new so that we can do our best work? Innovative problem solving, challenging challenges and assumptions. So flipping perspective, finding inspiration beyond traditional approaches. We're really looking for innovation. Leaders who innovate balance creativity and feasibility by preventing reactive or short-sighted fixes. So we're really wanting to not be reactive, but proactive, innovative in our creativity and feasibility. So in the best steps to solution development is step 1 is brainstorming our possible solutions. And then step 2 will be choosing the best solution. Now we're going to really blow out what we brainstorming possible solutions in 4 sections. 1 will be in the challenging of our assumptions, reversing our thinking, analogous thinking, and risk-free brainstorming using the Scamper tool. And then we'll be moving to step 2 for choosing the best solution. So the step 1 would be our brainstorming solutions. And the first one is, how do we challenge our assumptions? And challenging it is really asking the questions, why do we do it this way? What if we started from scratch? What constraints do we assume that we haven't tested? Just challenging the process. What are the questions we can ask to think outside of our proverbial box? The second step would be to reverse our thinking. So flipping the problem. Instead of asking, how do we fix this? Asking, how can we make this worse? And just really getting all those ideas and trying to find innovative solutions. If we can make something worse, if we can break something, then how can we make sure to maintain it and to keep it working? And then the third one is being inspired by analogous problems. And analogous is kind of like similar problems, similar themes in other contexts or industries, and then adapting these approaches to our problems. And I'll show you an example of what I mean in the next couple of slides. And then the risk-free brainstorming activity, which we will be using the Scamper tool, but creating an environment where unconventional ideas really are welcome before refining for feasibility. We ultimately will get there, but before we do that, how can we continue to create an environment of risk-free brainstorming? And using the Scamper method, it's a creative technique for modifying existing solutions, and the acronym will be defined as we go. So, some examples in action about challenging assumptions. So, for example, we have the question to ask. Ask, why do we do it this way? What if we start from scratch? What constraints do we assume we haven't tested? So, if we're going to look at an example, and then the other part was why, we'll just continue. Sorry. The other example would be reducing shipping errors in a warehouse. So, the scenario is a warehouse has a long-standing rule. Only senior members can verify shipments. Mistakes have increased, but leaders assume juniors aren't ready for verification tasks. So what are we going to do if we're going to for reverse thinking? Reverse thinking is challenging our untested beliefs about team roles using low risk testing, which could be training and a checklist. And then we are also wanting to promote ownership and learning for newer team members. So if we take into a question the asking the whys, reversing our thinking in our scenario, how do we reframe some of our assumptions? And the reframing becomes, what if newer associates can verify shipments with a checklist? Implementing short-term training, a checklist trial for junior associates. So the example would be, we're really challenging the idea that the assumption that juniors aren't ready for verification tasks. So what if we challenge those beliefs that they're not ready? What if we use a low risk testing solution, a training and a checklist, to then give them ownership and learning because we don't think that they're ready? So in this case, one of the solutions or a reframing of our assumptions would be, well, what if newer associates could verify shipments with a checklist? Then we're implementing short-term training, a checklist trial for junior associates, and we're able to challenge what we've done using a low-risk testing technique. And then we're also enabling ownership and learning for new members. If we're using, let me go back. If we're using the same example of reducing shipments errors in a warehouse, but now we want to implement reverse thinking. So how do we solve this problem? Instead of asking, how do we solve this problem? We're going to flip the perspective and ask, how do we make this problem worse? So if we're wanting to reduce errors in a warehouse, how can we increase shipping errors? That's the reverse. So then we'll remove all labels. We'll assign tasks randomly with no training, which goes very much against assigning roles and doing training, right? That we've talked about. Rush packing with no accuracy checks. We're throwing everything out the window. So if we do that, then how do we flip the reverse now to then find our solutions? So then we go from removing all labels to using standardized labeling system for easy tracking. We go from assigning tasks randomly with no training to assigning roles based on expertise with clear accountability. Then we go from rush packing with no accuracy checks to introducing a structured accuracy check process before the shipment. And why does reverse thinking works? Because it helps break us out of conventional thinking traps. We would be able to expose overlooked risks and weak spots. And then it also encourages unconventional but practical solutions. So if you looked at the first one, the assumption we had was that these junior roles weren't able to do the work. But the truth is they could be if we gave them training and a checklist and ownership. So the idea, hopefully I could pronounce this better today, but analogous, I'm hoping, thinking for problem solving, why it matters. Truth is, many industries face similar challenges, but the way we solve them in different ways. So if we're able to look beyond our immediate field, we can reveal innovative solutions that we might not have considered. So some of the steps to implementing what we call analogous thinking. And what is that? It's just that idea of using examples across some in another field that might be our own. So we're identifying similar challenges. So we're finding a problem in another field that resembles our own. We explore how others solve it, and then we come back and we research and analyze how others industries have tackled it. And then we come back and adapt it to our context, modifying and applying key takeaways that fit our situation. So, major takeaways on how this type of thinking improves problem solving is that there are many problems that share underlying structures, even if they look different on the surface, but on underlying, they're really dealing with the same things. So, we need to actively search for analogies that can unlock creative solutions. So, explicit prompts help people see the connections between problems and domain. So, to give you an example of that, we're going to have two problems. Scenario one is a radiation problem. So, a doctor must destroy a malignant tumor inside a patient, but using a high intensity radiation beam that will damage surrounding healthy tissue. A weaker beam won't destroy the tumor. What's the solution? Now, we have another problem in another area completely, a fortress problem. The military wants to capture a fortress surrounded by mines. A large force would set off the mines, but smaller groups approaching from multiple directions could converge on the fortress without triggering them. So you see a picture of the fortress, people coming in from different ends. You see the patient on the operating bed and different lasers coming in from different angles. So, what's the key insight? So, just like dividing the army in smaller forces, right? We're using the fortress problem. How do we solve the radiation problem? Low intensity radiation beams from different angles that can converge on the tumor without harming surrounding tissue. So, I hope you see the example of how can we look at how other industries solve similar problems. It shows how we could use the solutions from one context to another and then see if we could do a solution. So the fortress problem really helped solve this radiation problem because of their similarities. Hopefully that made sense and you liked the example. All right. So now we're moving into the risk-free brainstorming with the scamper method. And what is the scamper method? We're going to talk about that. But this is our structured approach to challenging assumptions and modifying solutions that will help our teams think beyond conventional ideas. So here are the questions, the guiding questions that we use to refine or reimagine solutions. One is substitute. What can we replace to improve efficiency? Combine. What can we merge two ideas for a stronger solution? What can we adapt? How can we adjust this for a new purpose? What can we modify? Can we tweak certain aspects to make this more effective? What can we put to another use? What could this solution serve? Eliminate. What necessary steps or elements can be removed? And then reverse. How can we flip the process to gain new perspective? Now, you'll do this a little bit more in depth in your skills lab, but before finalizing a solution, assign each scamper category to different members to brainstorm modifications. And then listing at least two scamper modified solutions and evaluate feasibility. And then pilot the modified approach on a small scale before full implementation. So, really working on a team event to get it. So, for example, how does this look when we have our scenario of a warehouse team has low engagement in daily huddles? New hires hesitate to speak up about errors or concern, and you want to build a safer space for open dialogue and shared learning. So, what can we substitute? And we're applying this to shipping errors. Substitute handwritten labels with scannable barcode labels auto generated from orders. What can we combine? We can combine packing and verification steps into one role with a double checklist. What can we adapt? We can adapt to pick to light systems from retail to guide workers through correct item selection. What can we modify? We can modify the packing station layout so items are always packed left to right in shipping order. What can we put to use? We can put to use underused scan logs to use by analyzing them for common error patterns or bottlenecks. What can we eliminate? We can eliminate SKUs from pick zones and reduce confusion and mispicks. What can we reverse? We can reverse the quality check timing. We can verify orders before boxing instead of after sealing. So that was quite a bit, but we're going to move on to Menti now. Take a little bit of a breather, but which brainstorming method that we talked about, challenging assumptions, reverse thinking, analogous thinking, and risk-free brainstorming using the Scamper method, would you like to try next time you have a problem to fix? Great. Being Ty, or now in the lead is the risk-free brainstorming Scamper. How confident we are on using it. Very good. As you can see, these are all different ways you can implement challenging assumptions as a team, reversing our thinking, looking at different problems throughout different industries and really highlighting some solutions, and then using the Scamper method to be able to see things from a different light and in a systematic way in order to do that. Very, very, very good. And that was the Scamper tool. Awesome. In use. Very good. Okay. So there are a lot of ways to brainstorm. So as we've done the step one in the brainstorming possibility of solutions, the goal really here is for you to pick one that works for you. And also don't be afraid to switch it up every once in a while. So these are tools for you to use at your disposal. But then once we get to step two, this is where we choose the best solution. And so this is when we apply the decision matrix. And so quick overview of what kind of decision matrix that we have. The two goals for that would be for looking for hidden risks and considering compromise. So this is the added layer to what we covered the first time with the decision matrix, but we're also now applying this idea of looking for hidden risks and then considering compromise. And so when we look at a trade-off solution evaluation. So how do we interpret the decision matrix? So trade-off is when you do one decision versus another. We learned, just a reminder that we learned about the decision matrix to compare solution based on the key factors like cost, time, feasibility, and impact. So what we're going to do is continue how to interpret these scores to make strategic trade-offs. Now, remember, no perfect solution exists. Every option comes with pros and cons. Sometimes a high scoring solution isn't always the best choice. Sometimes a lower scoring option is more feasible and aligns with better long-term goals. And ultimately, effective decision making requires balancing our priorities. So cost, time, feasibility, impact all must be weighed in order to weigh it against organizational constraints. And so how do we weigh all those things together? Some possible strengths and limitations of solutions that we need to keep in mind would be that sometimes process redesigns may not address root causes, but may address root causes, but create long-term improvements. Workload management ensures that tasks are balanced and team capacity is optimized. And then communication fosters alignment and team cohesion with minimal investment. So really looking into what are some of the high impact solutions that we can really assess. But this is a review, the solution decision making, just a review of what we covered in our first time together. So remember, we had a list of solutions, we decided on the criteria, we scored it, and then we looked at the total. And then using the total scores to identify what the best solution is. And then we covered on how do we evaluate the trade-offs in decision making. So the first two steps that we covered together were comparing high and low scores, right? So high score solutions typically provide strong impact, but might be more time, resources, or structural change. Low scoring may be quick wins, but may not, but could have long-term or limited long-term impact. And then also using again that idea of short-term versus long-term benefits, right? How do short-term fixes might stabilize immediate issues, but may not be sustainable. But then we have long-term solutions that require investments, but can prevent recurring problems. So how do we evaluate that? The new additional steps that we're diving deep into this week is for 3, we're going to add identifying acceptable compromises, which is looking for middle ground solutions that balance impact with feasibility. And then also recognizing hidden risks. So even well scored solutions might create unintended problems. What does that look like? So in this part, we're going to make sure that we're going to, instead of an expensive software overhaul, for example, we might implement something simpler, a phased approach with manual improvements first. Sometimes with recognizing hidden risks, we're discussing, sorry, excuse me. We're going to discuss trade-offs between high impact solutions with high cost versus longer timelines with lower costs, quicker off. So the trade-offs between what we're going to do. All right. So an example, just to remind you of what a solution decision matrix looks like. Sorry, this is where it is. Yeah. So we have, for brainstorming, we're going to condense a number of solutions and then consider compromises and hidden risks. So we've come up with a solution, newer associates to verify shipments, enabling stop shipment when errors are noticed, or using a standardized labeling system for easy tracking. So from this, we could see that we have some that have most of them have high impact, some have middle of the ground costs, longer time feasibility. And you can see we weighted at 16, 15, 13. So from this, we think, okay, using standardized labeling system for easy tracking is the go-to solution if we look at what the higher one is. So as we analyze this information, so similar to our work with our tech study, is standardized labeling scores highest, but requires moderate investment in system setup and retraining. What are the numbers telling us? We're looking at stop shipment protocol as cost effective. As you can see, it's the one that costs the least, but offers less impact if not paired with broader process changes. And then the other one is assigning shipment verification to newer associates has strong impact, but does need training and time and may pose feasibility challenges early on. So really looking at, okay, this is what we are. This is where we are. How do we, what compromises can we do to be able to balance cost, feasibility, and cost in the real world? So some of the questions you can ask when we're discussing the hidden risk and compromise, some of the questions are, how could we pilot each solution on a small scale to reduce risk before full implementation? So that idea of starting small before rolling it out. The other discussion that you can have would be, could we pair newer associates with mentors during verification to ease the learning curve? And then we can ask, what backup processes could we implement if stop shipment stops a bottleneck? And then another discussion that of a compromise we can do is, are there low tech labeling solutions we could test before investing in new systems? So kind of taking that two-step approach to making decisions and really looking for those compromises. All right. So hidden risks and compromises, which is I think I did this chart ahead of time, but newer risks may slow operations at first, potential for increased errors without proper training, enabling could delay, and then upfront tech or software costs. So really looking, here's your solution, but what are some of the risks, and looking at that second layer as we're looking into that. Okay. So that takes our decision matrix a step further and covers what that trade-off analysis would look like. Now we're going to get into implementation. And the implementation part will cover using our tools of test tracker, resource planning as well. We'll dive into SMART goals and milestones, and what does it really look like to assign clear roles and tasks. So turning plans into action. When we turn planning to action, we do require clear direction, realistic planning, structured follow through, not just completed tasks, but to guide our teams through change. We're really focusing on this change management process of our implementation. And what drives successful implementation? Just to recap: define goals, strategic resource allocation, and consistent monitoring. Conversely, the common pitfalls that will derail our execution will be undefined and unmeasurable goals, misaligned resources and team workload, and poor communication and follow through. So we highlighted what the things were for success, but really knowing and identifying our pitfalls are important. Change leadership insight, clear plans, and aligned resources support not just execution, but adaptation or adoption of new processes and behavior. So common pitfall implementation number one is undefined or unmeasured goals. So what happens? Without clear, measurable goals, the team lacks focus. We're leading scattered efforts. Our goals are too broad, too ambitious. It's making it difficult to track progress or determine success. So we're thinking about just be more efficient. It's a saying, it's not really a definable goal. Or setting a goal is saying eliminate all delays, but without a timeline or a strategy, we don't know if we're really implementing it correctly. So the solution to help us define our goals is using SMART goals. SMART is an acronym, and we're going to define that, and it's to create clear, actionable objectives. So instead of just saying we're going to improve productivity, a SMART goal is reduce shipment delays by 20% in 3 months by optimizing inventory flow. So that's the difference between a not SMART goal versus a SMART goal. And what does SMART mean? So this is a tool for your toolbox. SMART is keeps implementation focused, trackable, and adaptable. And the criteria is that a goal is specific, that's the S, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So we clearly defined what needs to be achieved. We include criteria for tracking progress and success. We make sure that the goal is realistic and within reach, and we align the goals with broader objectives or priorities. And we set clear deadlines or a timeline for completion. So if we'll say things like, well, we're going to reduce shipment delays by optimizing inventory flow. Very clear action. We're going to achieve 20% reduction in shipment delays. We're going to use existing warehouse resources and reorganization strategies and it's relevant because it's supporting company goal of improving customer satisfaction. And we will complete it within 3 months and track it monthly. Let's see, you need to go here. An example of a SMART goal worksheet is, can you see my screen? I hope I shared everything. Yes, I hope so. SMART goal activity worksheet that you would have would help you answer the questions. So specific who and what. If you're wanting to, for example, improve my public speaking skills by attending a public speaking course and practicing speeches twice weekly for the next 3 months. We'll say that really fast. But we want to make sure goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timeline. So using the worksheet to really define the who, the what, the how, is it reasonable, is it relevant, and then the when. Let's go back this way. Sorry. I think I need to go back. Sorry, guys. Go back to the Google Slides. And it's going back to the beginning. Let's see. Yes. All right. Now I'm troubleshooting what's going on with these slides. Now we're going to go inside. Awesome. I'll go through solutions back to. All right. Back to SMART goals. So you saw the SMART goal worksheet, which we just looked at. The other common pitfall is misaligning resources and team workload. And so what happens during change? Teams are often given new responsibilities without adjusting for their existing workloads, leading to overload and low adoption. So teams are assigned with new responsibility without considering workload. Lack of training or tools creates confusion and slows down progress. And our rushed implementations often lead to mistakes and inefficiencies. So this is what happens. The solution to it, so that we can ensure that we can assess team capacity before launching change. We want to make sure that we provide training and support to ensure teams feel prepared and not just informed. We want to roll out changes gradually to reduce strain and increase the change of long-term adoption. So there is a tool that you can use, which is called the resource planning tool. Taking your task, looking at the assigned team member, look at the time allocation, meaning the hours and the days that they have, the required resources, and then the potential challenges. So you really have that holistic view of what we're implementing. Okay, sorry, it just, when I use the link, it goes back and forth. So I'm going to, no, I need to go back this way. Okay, let's go this way. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and see if it works. Okay, now I got to go back. So we're just going to do this 2 times over. Okay, so after we do implementation, the first pitfall was the SMART goals. The second one was the research planning tool. Avoiding the third one, which is lack of clear communication and accountability. So what happens is that when team members don't fully understand their roles or how their tasks contribute to the overall goal, and then also without structured follow-ups, execution stalls and old habits persist. So what we really need to keep in mind is, like, if a manager announces a new workflow change but doesn't clarify who is responsible for each step, it leads to confusion. If you have a new inventory tracking system but you don't have routine checkups, or employees will risk to reverting to old tracking methods. So some of the solutions for that, to make sure that your communication is clear and you have set accountability, is using visual timelines, task tracker, role assignments for clarity, establishing regular check-ins to enforce accountability and to adapt as needed. And also, just as a recap, that we had the 3 keys to successful implementation that we had in our introduction lesson was action planning, assigning of roles, and setting realistic timelines, right? Breaking all the solutions into small, achievable tasks, making sure that we have clearly defined responsibilities, and also making sure we have a clear schedule with milestones to track progress. So, the last part, I believe, for the driving of implementation, before we get into some smart practicing, is that through communication, execution isn't just about structure, it's about clarity, engagement, and adaptability. So we really need to understand the challenges with active listening and empathy. We need to acknowledge emotions and team concerns for smoother execution. And so, what is the action that we do with that? It's gathering direct feedback from those impacted by the changes. This is called stakeholder management. For another way to look at it, they're part of the process. We can reduce resistance with using clear communication and transparency. So we explain why the plan matters and how it impacts everyone, using plain language and step-by-step instructions for clarity. And also encouraging collaboration and morale with inclusion and influence. Involving diverse perspectives strengthens implementation and reduces friction. Actively including team members in refining process, in the decision making. So the underbed for all of these is really for communication is having everyone involved, keeping that feedback loop open so that we can reduce resistance and have clear communication. So we're going to practice SMART goals. So we're going to go into Menti. We're going to go through a scenario and we're going to be answering 5 questions that will test our SMART goal skills. So this scenario, I should go back and say what the scenario is. Let me go. How do I go back? Oh, well, I'll just I'll verbalize the scenario. Sorry about that. I skipped 2 ahead. All right. So the scenario is your company is introducing a new employee training program to improve customer service. Leadership has asked your team to create a goal to enhance customer service satisfaction through better employee training over the next few months. Okay. That is the scenario that we're going to talk about. Now, the first question is of the 3 here, improving customer service skills, train employees to handle customer interactions better, or implementing a structured training program focused on active listening and problem resolution. Which goal specifies what needs to be achieved? Awesome. Let you in. All right. All right, let's get a few more answers in there. No, we're coming in at the end. Almost there. Hang in with me. All right, which one makes this specific? All right. All right. I'll go ahead and hit enter. 9. 9 of you've got implement a structured training program focused on active listening and problem resolution skills. The other 2 were really broad. Very good. All right. Next, question number 2. Which of these make it a good criteria for tracking progress? A, ensure employees feel more confident in customer interactions, increasing satisfaction by 15%, or training employees to see if customer satisfaction improves. Which one is a measurable goal? Awesome. And the key word here is measurable. So which of these ones actually gives you what you need for a measurable goal for tracking progress? Awesome. That's right. It's the landslide. There we go. It's increasing customer satisfaction by scores of 15%. When you see details of numbers, then you know this is measurable. I can measure against this. I can track this. All right. What makes this achievable? Which goal is realistic given available resources? Deliver 3 interactive training sessions per month, ensuring 85% participation, training all employees to become service experts in 2 weeks, eliminating all customer complaints within a month. Oh, very good. I think this is a landslide. Yes. Let's see. Very good. Yeah. Delivering 3 interactive training sessions per month, ensuring 85% participation from employees. These are clear, achievable, measurable. This is something we can do. Very good. All right. Question number 4. Which one makes this goal relevant? Which goal aligns with the overall broader company objective? Helping employees feel more engaged, improving customer satisfaction and reducing service complaints by equipping employees with better problem skills, or upgrading office equipment for better work environment. Which makes this one relevant? Landslide again. Absolutely. Yes, improving customer satisfaction and reducing service complaints by equipping employees with better problem-solving skills. Very, very good. All right. And number 5, what makes this one time-bound? What communicates a clear deadline? Rolling it out soon, evaluating it over time, or launching the new program within the next 2 months and measuring improvements over 6 months. Awesome. Yes. Very good. That is it. Exactly. Launching the new training program within the next 2 months, measuring improvements over 6 makes it time bound. We are committed. We are stuck with this timeline to be able to evaluate our success. Wonderful. So we have successfully practiced SMART goals. And in the end, our final SMART goal becomes something like this: implementing a structured training program focused on active listening and problem resolution skills, increasing customer satisfaction scores by 15%. Deliver 3 interactive training sessions per month, ensuring 85% participation from employees. Launch the new training program within the next 2 months and measure improvements over the next 6 months. So, round of applause for everyone. We have successfully done SMART goals, which is great. Okay, so our last piece we're going to talk about the 2 frameworks for the monitoring and adaptation. One being the retrospective analysis, and then the PDCA, which is the continuous improvement framework. Now, what do we do in monitoring and adaptation is we're tracking progress and making adjustments by assessing our progress and refining strategies using feedback and data. So the 2 frameworks are, one is called the retrospective SWOT analysis. And then we saw this acronym earlier, the PDCA, plan, do, check, and act cycle. So it's a continuous improvements model for us to be able to look back. And so to maintain success, ongoing success in problem solving, we need structures to be able to track our progress, identify challenges, and refine strategies. So the SWOT is a structured approach to evaluating our past performance by identifying successes, challenges, and opportunities, and risks to refine strategies and drive continuous improvement. The PDCA then is a continuous improvement model that refine our solutions based on real-time feedback. So as we're getting feedback, as we're doing changes, we are constantly doing adjustments. So retrospective SWOT, why does it matter? Oftentimes, many teams repeat mistakes or fail to scale success because we don't take the time to analyze what's working and what needs improvement. Retrospective analysis combined with a SWOT analysis helps our team systematically assess performance, refine strategies, and drive sustainable improvements. So the steps to conducting a retrospective SWOT is our strengths, identifying what successes and strengths that we have to the solution. Our weaknesses, can we pinpoint challenges or any inefficiencies? What are some of the opportunities? Looking for ways to expand on success. And threats, identifying potential future risks to our long-term success. So, for example, how we could use that is that our warehouse team recently implemented a new order packing workflow. And after 2 weeks, errors have decreased, but fulfillment times are still inconsistent. So, using a SWOT will help us identify inefficiencies in the verification process and may refine our workflow for a smoother operation. So, the tools that we can use for that, technologies that we have are Miro or Mural. So we saw the video on Mural. How do we use online whiteboards for collaborative discussion using sticky notes, templates? Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, you can do a quick survey to collect feedback. What worked? What didn't work? What do we need to improve? Trello or Asana, those are different softwares out there with different boards that you can use to get for tracking. And then also a retrospective template, either PDF or Excel, just a structured document to be able to capture your insights after major initiatives. Retrospective, oh goodness, it keeps doing that to me. The retrospective, where is it? Sorry, I did not have these technical difficulties on Monday, but I do today. Okay, where do I need to go back? Let's go back into Smart Goals. Okay. All right, the retrospective, we're going to open that in a new tab. And then I'm going to exit. And then I'm going to exit. And here we go. Here's a retrospective analysis worksheet where you could ask the questions, what went well, what didn't go well, what were the lessons learned, and what are the action items? So it's a systematic way just to look back, listing successes, positive aspects of the problem solving process. This is going to click to enter. Okay. Okay. And we'll go back this way. So a sample worksheet, once you get that information, you can even use it within a board where people can list strengths. Just imagine if you were in that Miro board. Here's the section for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and having people put in their post-it notes. What worked well? What advantages did we have? What challenges did we face? What new approaches should we try? And what obstacles could prevent success? And so looking into that. The PDCA, which is a plan, do, checked, and act cycle, is a structured process for testing and refining solutions. Teams risk wasting resources on ineffective strategies. So the PDCA cycle allows for improvements to be measured. It's iterative and it's sustainable. And so what are the steps? One is the plan. We define the problem, we gather the data, and we create a strategy for improvement. Then the do, we actually implement the plan on a small scale to test its effectiveness. And then we analyze, checking the results, comparing actual versus expected outcomes. And then we act, adjusting and scaling successful strategies while refining weaker areas. An example would be if you had a logistics team and experiencing frequent shipment delays due to outdated tracking methods, instead of overhauling the entire system, what if we plan and test a new automated tracking system in one warehouse? We implement in a small pilot group and monitor results. We compare tracking, accuracy, and shipment times before and after, and then we act. If it's effective, we roll it out system-wide. If not, then we go back and we refine our approach. So we're not stuck in inaction, right? We're actually working through and putting it forward. So some of the tools that we could use for the PDA cycle are some workflow tracking platforms that have them built in, Monday.com or Jira. Diagramming tools to map out some cycles visually as Lucid Art or Draw.io. And then on small scale implementation results, you can use Google Sheets or Airtable PDCA tracker to check on improvements. If I let's see again, here is an example of the PDCA cycle: plan, do, and check and act. And it will go through the different components of it: defining the problem, setting your objectives, your do, your check, and your act, and really just walks you through the process of doing it. Okay, so now I get to go back into the spreadsheet. I don't understand why it's doing this to me today, but we're just going to go and check it out. Okay, so we did threats, we did the PDCA, we saw an example of it, and I think that about covers our PDCA, and then we are to go to Menti. Right. So now, as we think about monitoring and adapting tools that we just discussed, which I knew was quite a bit and felt like a fire hose, so I do apologize for that. But you have this to be able to reflect on. How confident are you at continuously assessing progress and refining your problem-solving strategies? Hey, confident. Great. Oh, I'm so excited. This looks really great. Good. Extremely confident. So glad to be part of your journey. As a couple of you continue to think about the tools, think about how you'll want to implement them, how you might want to deepen your understanding of them. This is going to be a great opportunity for you as we get into, excuse me, as we get into looking ahead. Let's see. So looking ahead, which of the problem solving framework or toolkit are you most excited or remotely encouraged and interested, intrigued in? I can use all the different words of you looking into this week: the cognitive bias checklist, the Scamper method, the SMART goals, or the retrospective SWOT. Scamper, I really like that one as well. Yep, SMART goals. SMART goals, excuse me. SMART goals can also be used for your personal, professional development, ways to set your goals as well. So it's really quite useful. Retrospective SWOT, great. SMART goal. It looks like SMART goals for the win. We're just have a SMART group today. So really exciting. Good. Yay. Gonna have a nice hand of applause for everybody. We are almost getting to the end. So I know it was 2 hours of a lot of content, and I'm hoping that as we are wrapping things up and we're going to get into the reflect and grow and our wrap up quiz, how do you feel now with the I can statements that apply to you? How would you rate yourself in overcoming cognitive pitfalls with prevention toolkits? How are you with I can solutions by challenging your assumptions, exploring comparative innovative approaches? Can you create clear, actionable implementation plans by setting SMART goals? And also how I can track progress and adapt strategies using monitoring frameworks like PDCA and retrospective analysis to drive continuous improvement. Wow, everyone's all in this is definitely awesome from when we first started in the beginning of our session. So I say this was a job well done. Oh, super exciting. Good. Good, good, good. I'll let a couple of you continue to think about this before we move into our assignment review. Cool. All right. Very good. Thank you all so much. All right, we're going to go ahead and Oops, one second. I'm going to go ahead and review your reflect and grow. So you're familiar with the process, right? You'll have your 2 steps, your pre-submission weekly growth challenge, and then your end of the week reflection. And so for this week, your part 1 is that you're going to look at your weekly skills challenge. So, over the next few days, we would love to invite you to apply at least one of the skills from this lesson that's listed in the yellow box. So, either cognitive bias checklist, scamper, reverse thinking, analogous thinking, SMART goal, retrospective SWOT analysis, or the PDCA cycle. Observe how others use them, or either in your workplace or in your personal life. And then part 2 is your end of the week reflection. So after completing part 1, spend 15 minutes at the end of your week to reflect which strategy or toolkit did you apply, what challenges were you trying to solve, what was the result, what worked well, and what could you improve for the next time? And what did you learn about your own problem solving approach, and how will you use it going forward? And that is that part. Great. Awesome. If there's any last minute questions before I hand it over, please let me know in the chat, or we're few, you can also unmute.